Welcome to the First Grade Online Content Webcast. This webcast is intended to provide teachers and those who support them in the classroom with background information on Benjamin Franklin as a foundation for the Georgia Standards of Excellence. In kindergarten, students were introduced to U.S. history through a study of American holidays and symbols. Basic concepts of geography and economics were presented, and civics was introduced through rules and good character traits. First grade students will continue their introduction to United States history through the study of selected historical figures. Students will learn about the important contributions they made. They will also learn about where and when these historical figures lived and the positive character traits each person displayed. The concept of patriotism will also be explored. In the standards shown, you will notice the words read about, describe, and identify. These words specify exactly what students need to know, understand, and be able to do. In Element A of the History Standard SS1H1, students will identify the contributions made by each historical figure. Specific focuses are given for each person. In Element B, students will describe how the everyday life of these historical figures is similar to and different from present everyday life. This includes similarities and differences in food, clothing, homes, transportation, communication, and recreation. In the first geography standard, SS1G1, students will describe how each historical figure was influenced by his or her time and place. The primary sources and the literature connections presented in upcoming slides may also be used to illustrate how the time period and place in which the person lived impacted their lives. In the first civic standard, SS1 CG1, students will describe how each historical figure displayed positive character traits. The literature connections presented may be used to prompt discussions about which character traits each person exhibited and to cite text evidence to support students' thinking. Teachers will observe students' understanding of these standards as they are encouraged to orally respond to primary sources and read-alouds. Likewise, students might also respond in writing. Both of these types of responses nicely tie in first grade standards for reading informational text as well as research writing and presentations. Examples of primary sources are incorporated into this webcast. The chart on this slide shows one example of a way to analyze a primary source. Identifying and using primary and secondary sources is an information processing skill students should be introduced to in first grade. To use the primary source chart, first students describe what they see on the primary source. It might be as detailed as the clothing someone is wearing, or as broad as noticing the landscape. Students may turn and talk with a partner about what they see, or individually contribute their findings to a list. Next, students focus on what they think when they look at the primary source. When they respond, they start with the words, I think. Again, they may turn and talk or individually contribute their thinking. In this part of the activity, students may disagree, but should still respect all responses. Finally, students are asked what they wonder. This question is the most challenging prompt. Students must extend their thinking to build on what they already know. Again, they may turn and talk or individually contribute their curiosities. After students have had an opportunity to share, they are given background information on the primary source. Primary source analysis is an excellent activity for introducing a new historical figure or concept. This webcast will focus on the history, geography, and civic standards related to Benjamin Franklin. Students will study the important contributions and everyday life of Franklin as an inventor, an author, and a statesman, as well as how the colonial time period of the 1700s and the colonial area in which he lived influenced him. Throughout the study, students will describe the positive character traits Franklin exhibited, such as perseverance, commitment, respect for others, and equality. One learning target for students is I can tell about Benjamin Franklin and his contributions as an inventor, an author, and a statesman. Benjamin Franklin was one of the founding fathers of the United States, and a co-author of the Declaration of Independence. He excelled in many areas, including science, politics, and writing. He is known for map making, experimenting with electricity, and inventing useful items including bifocals and the Franklin stove. He started the first public library and the first fire department. The image on the left shows a portrait of Franklin. The image on the right shows the drafting committee of the Declaration of Independence presenting their work to the Congress. After examining these primary sources, you might ask students, what did you notice first? If this picture was taken today, what might be different? What can you learn from these images? The first image on this slide shows Franklin on a stamp from 1847. He was the head of Congress when the U.S. Postal Service was created in 1775. The second image was painted by David Martin and illustrates Franklin's love of reading, his curiosity, and his dedication to learning. The third image illustrates Franklin's experiment with lightning and electricity in 1752. The boy in the picture is his son William. Franklin noticed similarities between lightning and electricity. When analyzing this image, students may wonder about the supplies Franklin chose for his experiment. While standing outside in a storm, he used string, a kite, a key, and a jar. When the lightning struck the kite, he captured an electrical spark in the jar, proving the electric nature of lightning. Teachers might also discuss the great risk of electrocution Franklin took doing this experiment. This discussion would tie in with first grade science standards for scientific inquiry as well. It's important to incorporate first grade map skills and information skills when teaching the standards. In first grade, students should master using a compass rose to identify cardinal directions and be introduced to intermediate directions. In doing so, teachers can also tie in standards G2 and G3 when discussing and identifying their location as well as other continents, oceans, and landforms. When reading, viewing, or listening to information, first grade students should be introduced to the following skills: distinguishing between fact and opinion, identifying and using primary and secondary resources, and interpreting timelines. Another learning target for students is I can tell about Benjamin Franklin's positive character traits. The image on the left illustrates the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which ended the Revolutionary War. This negotiation is evidence of Franklin's perseverance and commitment. The image on the right shows a page from Poor Richard's Almanac. Franklin wrote the publication under a pseudonym. This particular page, entitled Lessons for the Young and Old, contains his best-known sayings, many of which encouraged hard work and respect for others. A few of his well-known sayings include, early to bed and early to rise make a man healthy, wealthy, and wise, and either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. His involvement as co-author of the Declaration of Independence demonstrated his concern for equality as well. Another learning target for students is I can tell about Benjamin Franklin's life in colonial America in the 1700s. The image on the left shows the clothing of the 1700s. The image on the right shows a mother and a child in a colonial kitchen. Teachers could use the primary source chart to analyze these images as well as compare them to present-day images. The books shown on this slide are suggestions for interactive read-alouds. These specific titles are not necessary to have in order to teach these standards, but are an option if they are available in your system. Other book companies may offer books that support the same content information for this grade level. As well as delivering content that addresses the social studies standards, Read-Alouds also offer opportunities to develop comprehension skills and enhance vocabulary. This concludes the first grade online content webcast on Benjamin Franklin.